r/malicious compliance. First story. You want proof I got hurt? It'll cost your job. A bit of backstory. I've worked a call center at a well-respected company in my area for about 2 years now. When I was about a year in, I started working from home. At this point my supervisor wasn't the best person. I don't know if she didn't like me because I didn't take her garbage like everyone else on the team did, or if it was something else entirely. We butt heads a lot. Anyway, a few months ago in April, the desk chair at my home office broke while I was noting an account. I'm not the lightest guy, as my username might imply, and it was a really old chair I got from my ex. My back was injured really badly. Parts of the chair were dug into my skin. I had cuts, and parts of my shirt were stained red and cut up from the injuries. I messaged my supervisor immediately about this, telling her I would be clocking out to go to the hospital. Now, I have never been late a day in my life, and I almost never use time off, even when it's offered. There was no reason for me to be skipping work that day either, especially since the office was so slow. After I'm in my car with a towel on the driver's seat, my supervisor texts me, somehow offended that I was going to the emergency room. She later said she didn't believe me, and that if I wanted any kind of workers' comp I had to prove it to her. Cue malicious compliance. Once I was home from the I snapped a photo of my freshly stitched back, my stained shirt, and a picture of the broken chair. I sent a photo of these things to her, as well as a screenshot of the texts to ours and the site director, just to make sure nothing got lost. I later got reimbursed for my time, the medical bills, and a $400 replacement chair to use moving forward. The day after I came back I was called by the site director who told me I would be changing to another team, and a week later I was told my old supervisor was no longer with the company. The moral of the story, don't take guff from anyone, and always keep the receipts. Second story. Try to become our boss, screw over employees and order us to follow our contract exactly how it is written. Let's see how this works out. Before the company was sold and then driven into the ground by the new owners, I worked as a patrol supervisor for a high-end security company. Now let's explain some things that are relevant to the story. Only supervisors got salary. Our normal working week was 48 hours, 4 12-hour days. Anything over that we got hour for hour paid time off in lieu of a normal vacation. Our contract stated that if a supervisor worked any position that wasn't as a supervisor on duty they were to be paid an hourly rate based on their average hourly salary rate. Contracts stated two more important things. That the company can buy paid time off for 85% or more of its value. If the employee agrees, said employee can also offer to sell it back for any amount too. Contracts are valid for 1 year. If the employer wants to renegotiate before that time the employer has to pay so much for each month the contract is still valid for. Not the exact phrasing, it's been a while, but you get the idea. For clarity we're 5 months into our current contract at the time. Now the owner, I'll call John, was awesome. He expected a lot, but he treated everyone well. Gave his supervisors almost free rein, made sure officers had the best equipment to protect themselves, and was generally just a good guy. So we didn't give him much flack over little things. Now we asked for, and he gave, the supervisors a discretionary fund for our officers. On most nights we had on-call officer, some nights we didn't. If we needed to call someone in we could say hey come in and work and I'll buy you lunch, or you want to come in but don't have the gas to get to your region and back. Meet me at this gas station and I will buy you some gas, little things to keep the supervisors from having to work regions and do our jobs. Plus it made everyone happy. Normal cost was around $450 to $500 a month, but saved the company thousands. He wanted a low turnover company and found ways to keep experienced people applying and staying with the company. Enter the new hours rep, Mary. Well, she calls a meeting with us supervisors. She has some things she needs to discuss. So the next morning me and my fellow 2 supervisors show up. On the table was an end to the discretionary fund. It cost the company too much, she said, and stuck to it after us explaining how it saved money. Also, without going into specifics, we had to work exactly like our employment contract stated, no deviating. Also any requests for promotions among the officers needed to be approved by her, which to her they were just a payroll number, and a bunch of other things designed to put herself between us and John and become our boss. Now none of us had never really read the whole contract, so at the end we went over it without her. Turns out there are loopholes we could drive a truck through, but legally valid. Now we could have taken this to John, but we knew he would say to give it a chance, so we did. Seeing we were salary, our pay period was monthly, 30 days, instead of weekly. We also knew John didn't read certain emails or payroll until the end of the month, so we set out to do exactly as she asked. Stick to the contract. So, we each worked our 48 hours and other days of the week. I ended up working 24 days out of that month, my normal 48 hours as a supervisor plus an additional 24 to 36 hours a week as a region patrol officer. Mostly because without our fund it was getting almost impossible to get people to come in on their days off. So we split it up, but I did the majority. So we submitted a forms for not only paid time off for those extra shifts, but a pay request for hourly for each extra shift, which for me was $18.75 an hour for each one. I never went into hourly overtime for the week. At the end of 27 days I accumulated over 100 hours of paid time off from the extra shifts and going overtime on my supervisor shifts. John was added to the ML also, but the subject was end of the month forms, which means he wouldn't read them until the end of the month to verify the ones Mary gave him were correct. In other words, we double dipped like a son of a bitch that month. Now fast forward 27 days after the meeting and John sent us an email stating he was aware of the situation and scheduled a meeting for 8 AM the next day. We get in there and he doesn't look happy, but Mary looked smug, so we got worried it might have backfired until John started, and basically it went like this. Gentlemen, Mary told me about your meeting. She didn't discuss it with me first, or I would have stopped it. I also know, if you would have came to me, I would have said to try it out. Also ours will never be in charge of the supervisors. You work for me and me alone. So holds up 3 envelopes and hands them out. Here is your hourly pay for being region officers this month. Your normal pay comes at the normal time. Also hands out another envelope to each of us. This is my attempt to buy back all your paid time off you have gained this month at 90%. If you don't accept, give me the check back. None of us did. Now here is another check each for the contract buyout, and I will have a new one ready in the morning. I have also refilled and reactivated the cards for your discretionary fund. So you sit as needed, and if you run out before the end of the month, email me. He then looks over at Mary and says, so Mary, how much did your idea save the company? Mary, $500. John replies, no Mary, it cost the company $12,000. That's what those checks totally. Sure, SpongeBob got the lion's share, but the man is a work animal. It still cost me $12,000. Then Mary said something that I'm sure she got fired for. She said, come on John, it's just words on a piece of paper and not really legally binding. Besides, the use of loopholes in a contract is illegal. That got us all staring at her. We may not have attended business school, but we are smart enough to know she was not only wrong, but dead wrong. Yeah. The next day John sent out an email saying the position was open and anyone interested to send in their resumes. P.S. The only changes to our contract was adding that we could get PTO or our hourly rate. TLDR. New hours rep tried to save the company $500 and ends up costing it $12,000 and pisses the employees off. Third story. Skip on a high school senior tradition? Never. But how about a double serving of malicious compliance instead? This isn't my story, but it happened to some high school classmates of mine in the late 1990s. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to be part of it. The app calculus class teacher had a tradition that held up for at least a decade, where, if you brought your college acceptance letter, you'd be invited to his breakfast club. Essentially, instead of taking the math final exam for the year, he'd provide transportation to the local IHOP, buy everyone breakfast, and shoot the breeze together. The gesture was a popular and welcome one. After all, these were the brightest kids in the school, the top 10%, including the valedictorian and the salutatorian, the captain of the debate team, and others. Taking a final exam, when they were already assured their places in Ivy League schools, was a pointless formality. After all, the year this story happened, However, there was a new teacher who made a big deal about how unfair the breakfast club was. Funnily enough, her name was Karen. The school's vice principal came in and told the class that they would stay in the school with everyone else and take the final exam, or else they'd face in-school suspension. The app calculus teacher had his hands tied. So, on the day of the test, a Friday, the whole class came in and took their test, which consisted of a single question: "What's your name?" The students looked up to see a shit-eating grin on the teacher's face, and they quickly caught on. Everyone filled in their papers, submitted them, and then they went off to IHOP. Perfect test scores for everyone. By the time the weekend was over, the whole school knew the story, and Karen must have complained to the vice principal once more, because he came and gave in-school suspension tickets for the entire class. It was truly an odd sight to see the school's geniuses file into the ice room, only to find their app calc teacher, who had volunteered for monitor duties, or swapped with the normal monitor, or something. And he had brought bags of bagels, cream cheese, white fish spread, and butter for everyone serving suspension that day. Mr. Buckley, you're a legend. Edit. Forgot a detail. Edit 2. Thanks for the awards, everyone. Hope you all have a great day.